Chapter 61, You Want to Cheat Me? You are still young. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fred slumped in the Quidditch stands, bored out of his skull. He felt like he had some kind of muggle-induced trauma. Okay, maybe it wasn't actual trauma, but that's what Charlie had called it. Even though a month and a half had gone by, and it was already mid-May, he still couldn't get excited about anything. Take this inter-school Quidditch final, for example. It was supposed to be super intense, but he just couldn't get into it. He kept getting flashbacks to that night in the castle. Ugh, George had gone out for a late-night stroll too and ended up waiting around most of the night. Poor sap, even thinking about his own experience made him want to shout it from the rooftops. Fred shot a glare at Professor Swann, who was sitting in the professor's box. So unfair. Why did Swann have to put him under a magical NDA? It was the craziest thing that had ever happened to him, and he couldn't tell a soul. He was dying inside. Swann wouldn't let him breathe a word about the professor's duel or the Gryffindor secret. He even made Fred sign a magical contract. That was low. Didn't the guy trust him? He was great at keeping secrets. He'd only tell George. Fred had a sneaking suspicion that Swann just didn't want anyone to know how beat up he'd gotten. He still remembered Swann stumbling out of the secret chamber. His right cheek was puffed up, he had 2 black eyes, and his robes were a mess, like he'd been through a wringer. Fred remembered him muttering something like, "Damn old Dumbledore, you're a savage." Ouch, that hurts. Fred had been confused then, and he was still confused now. It was just the Gryffindor thing, right? Swann looked like he'd gotten the short end of the stick, not some awesome magical power-up. Maybe it was a scam inheritance. Yikes. Good thing the gate hadn't wanted him. He probably would have been stuck in there forever. As soon as Swann came out, the gate and the boulder had crumbled into dust. Now, there was just a pile of rubble. Whatever was inside that gate was Swann's secret now. Fred glanced at Professor Snape, who was sitting next to Swann, and felt a surge of respect. Snape was such a workaholic. Even injured, he'd begged Dumbledore to let him take over defense against the dark arts. Ever since Robert had gotten sent to Azkaban, Snape had been teaching the class. Dumbledore should give Snape some kind of medal for dedication. Plus, Fred really wanted to thank Snape for saving his life, but they barely knew each other, and he couldn't just walk up and start gushing. Fred, quit zoning out. Cheer for Hogwarts. Fred rolled his eyes at George. A wave of smugness washed over him. Poor, clueless George. You have no idea what I've been through. Just wait until the truth comes out, buddy. You'll be so jealous. Fred sat up straight and yelled, "Charlie, stop daydreaming and catch that snitch." After the qualifying rounds, Hogwarts had limped into the finals with a 2-win, 2-loss record, while Durmstrang was undefeated with 3 wins. The final match was intense from the start, with both teams battling it out and the score staying neck and neck. Now, it all came down to who had the better seeker. Charlie soared through the air, laser-focused on finding the golden snitch. Oblivious to everything except the wind in his face, he only had eyes for the snitch and his rival, Krum. Suddenly, Krum dove sharply on his broom. Wronski feint. Charlie immediately recognized the move. He'd already confirmed there wasn't a snitch down there. A smirk crept across Charlie's face as he thought of something he'd read in Muggle Studies class. Nice try, Krum. Fool me once. He yanked his broom upward and shot skyward, as if he'd spotted the snitch and was making a mad dash. Sure enough, Krum slammed on the brakes and chased after him. Huh, you're just a 3rd year. You're too green for this psychological warfare. Charlie looked at the tie score and made a decision. He was going to take a risk and end this game with a bang. He'd already turned down offers from professional teams, so this might be his last official Quidditch game. He wanted to go out with a bang. He wanted Hogwarts to win. He looked at Marcus, caught his eye, and flashed him a subtle signal. Then he dropped his altitude, sidled up to Krum, and stuck to him like glue. No matter where Krum flew, Charlie was right there. Charlie was multitasking like crazy, scanning for the snitch, shadowing Krum's every move, and blocking Krum's line of sight to Marcus. Finally, Charlie got his opening. A wide grin spread across his face. Krum. Charlie roared at the top of his lungs, the wind distorting his voice. Ever been nailed by a bludger? The entire stadium gasped. A black blur shot across the sky at incredible speed, zipping past Charlie's face in a split second. Charlie ducked just in time, narrowly avoiding the bludger. The bludger slammed into Crumb with bone-jarring force. Merlin! The crowd screamed. Crumb plummeted to the ground like a broken bird. The stadium was in stunned silence. No one had expected Charlie and Marcus to pull off such an amazing play and clinch the victory for Hogwarts. Ha ha ha, Charlie, way to go! Durmstrang's headmaster, Karkaroff, jumped up and rushed onto the field, his face red with anger. When Crumb opened his eyes in Karkaroff's arms, he heard the final whistle, *we*. Hogwarts wins. Chapter 62, In addition to fighting and killing, there are also final exams in life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. With final exams looming, the Quidditch craze fizzled out in a couple of days. Only 14 days until the OWL's, ordinary wizarding level exams. Take them seriously, they'll determine your future. Professor McGonagall dropped that bomb on the fifth-year class right after the break. Suddenly, Hogwarts was a pressure cooker. The 5th and 7th years especially were hit hard with a bad case of pre-exam jitters, what Professor Swann called pre-exam syndrome in Muggle studies. One Ravenclaw girl had a meltdown at breakfast. "I'm so stupid," she sobbed. "It's so late, and I still have History of Magic to review. I'll never get all O's. History of Magic. Seriously? So what if I fail that class? And you're aiming for straight O's? Lady, give us a break. Poor students have feelings too. Stop stressing everyone out." That set off a chain reaction. 5th and 7th graders got even more anxious, with headaches and insomnia running rampant, spreading to younger students. Seeing their distress, Sebastian offered some helpful advice based on his own school experiences. If you're stressed, a tranquilizer and a stimulant combo works wonders. Next thing you know, a line formed outside the infirmary. Madame Pomfrey was swamped and lit into Sebastian for the chaos he caused. He shrugged, helpless. He ended up footing the bill for a ton of potions from Swann Alchemy to meet the demand. Along with exam stress came a wave of cheating devices. As a professor, Sebastian was confiscating all sorts of weird contraptions. After dealing with some kids selling dried fox poop as dragon claw powder, Sebastian hauled the Weasley twins into his office. He tossed 2 cheating quills on the table and glared at them, his aura chilling the room. "Tell me, why were you making these things?" Fred and George stared at the floor, looking ashamed and nervous, like they wanted to disappear. "Did you learn alchemy just to create garbage like this? Did you think it would be easier to use if you made it yourself?" Sebastian was angry. He'd always been open with the twins about alchemy, even doing personal demonstrations. He considered them half-apprentices. The two worked hard and never complained. They had even finished his assignment at the beginning of May, creating a perfect Hogwarts navigation map. He would have understood if it were just joke items, but cheating devices were a step too far. Fred looked up. "Professor, we just thought it would be fun." "Fun?" Sebastian's voice was flat. "Yeah, fun." George chimed in, seeing that Professor Swann wasn't yelling. "We saw the cheating quill and thought it was interesting. We wanted to see if we could replicate it. Fred can back me up. It's true. We were competing to see who could make a better one. I was just about to find a judge when you found it. I haven't been in a good mood recently, so I was just looking for a way to entertain myself." Sebastian's shoulders relaxed, so they weren't planning to cheat. His anger faded, replaced by a wry smile. "Guess I overreacted." They were telling the truth. He sighed, shaking his head. "All right, I admit I overreacted a bit. Professor, you wronged us." He pulled out cups and poured 3 cokes, earning delighted looks. "I apologize." "Cheers." Fred and George gulped down the soda, thanked him, and bounced out of the office. No matter how much the students dreaded it, final exams arrived. Muggle studies was scheduled for the last day. This was Sebastian's first time proctoring. Watching the students scribbling away, he felt a sense of satisfaction. Some were smiling, some frowning, some scratching their heads. Hey, the exam's only been going for half an hour, and someone's already finished and conked out on the table. Oh. "It's Percy, the academic machine," figures. Sebastian strolled around the classroom, hands behind his back. The students' reactions were priceless. Some were so nervous they could barely hold their quills, others just rolled their eyes and kept working, and a few brave souls grinned at him without a hint of fear. After the finals, the 5th and 7th years had 2 weeks of OWLs and NEWTs, respectively. Sebastian skipped proctoring duties. Instead, after greeting the examiners from the Wizarding Examination Bureau, he started grading the 3rd, 4th, and 6th year exams. He wanted to gauge his teaching effectiveness, and the students' grades were the best indicator. Not bad, lots of O's, outstanding, and nothing lower than E, exceeds expectations. Finally, exams were over, and the students were free, except for a few nerds checking their answers in the books. Most of the kids were ready to party. The school was filled with laughter. Marcus obsessed about his grades for 5 minutes before heading to the Quidditch pitch with his friends. Percy sorted his used textbooks and vowed to get straight A's on his OWLs next year. Charlie and some 7th-year classmates wandered from classroom to classroom, saying their farewells to Hogwarts. Fred and George perked up and started planning another late-night adventure. As Dumbledore announced the start of dinner, the students enjoyed their last meal before leaving school. Slytherin House beat Ravenclaw House by 20 points to win the House Cup. Unlike previous years, the other 3 houses were relatively quiet. Everyone had noticed Professor Snape's changes over the past year. He no longer deducted points from other houses arbitrarily or boosted his own. In fact, he had become much stricter with Slytherin. Slytherin won fair and square this year. The students couldn't help but wonder what had triggered Professor Snape's transformation. Sebastian sat next to Snape, happily tucking into his steak. He glanced at Snape and nodded toward Dumbledore. Then, in a low voice, he asked, "Severus, the 10 years are up. We're ready to get hairy. Do you want to come with us?" Chapter 63. Hello, Harry Potter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Saturday, June 1991, 4 Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey, London. The house was neat, ordinary, with a perfectly manicured lawn and flower beds. The Dursleys, who lived here, were a typical middle-class family. Vernon Dursley was the man of the house, a burly, red-faced man with a thick mustache. He always wore a suit and tie and loved to bark orders. His wife, Petunia Dursley, was a thin woman who dressed impeccably and enjoyed showing off her home's perfection to the neighbors. They had one son, Dudley Dursley. He was fat, rude, and a typical spoiled kid. Oh, and they also had a nephew, Harry Potter. Unlike the tall and heavy Dudley, Harry was thin and looked frail. He had a mop of shaggy black hair that never stayed combed, much to his Uncle Vernon's annoyance. The most striking thing about him was the lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. His bright green eyes, hidden behind a pair of worn, round glasses, often held a look of melancholy. Harry wasn't having a great day. Since early that morning, Uncle Vernon had put the whole family to work cleaning the house from top to bottom. After dinner, Vernon cleared his throat and announced to the family, "Today is a big day, a very big day. As you all know, after I won the Outstanding Executive Award, a member of the company's board of directors decided to come to our house with his wife." Harry lowered his head and kept washing dishes, his heart filled with resentment. He knew all about it. Uncle Vernon had been going on about it all week. Having a board member visit was a huge honor for him. From Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia's conversations, he knew Vernon had been trying to dig up information on this mysterious board member. Unfortunately, they didn't have much to go on, only that the board member rarely showed up at the company and was shrouded in mystery. However, rumors had it that this board member owned the largest stake in the whole company. This had Vernon practically jumping out of his skin, determined to make a good impression. Harry felt bummed. He'd been cleaning all day and was wiped out. This is a golden opportunity. Vernon's voice rose a few notches, unusually serious. Whether I get a promotion and a raise, become a general manager, a CEO, and reach the top, depends on tonight. We need to rehearse again, Vernon said, standing up and directing everyone to their places. When the time comes, Penny. It's thrilling just thinking about it. Petunia said, looking eager. But after Vernon glared at her, she quickly plastered on a sweet smile. I'll be in the living room, greeting them with the warmest smile. Smile more naturally, more enthusiastically, Vernon instructed until Petunia finally produced the perfect smile. Dudley, my little cutie, you just stick with me, say hello to the guests, and then go back to your room to play games. Harry. Listen up, boy. Vernon stepped forward, bending down to glare at Harry. Since you were 5, I let you move out of the cupboard under the stairs and into the spare bedroom. You've never gone without food, clothes, or anything else. You should be grateful. You better stay in your room, he said, pointing at the lightning scar on Harry's forehead. You know, your scar creeps people out. If you mess this up for me, I swear, you won't leave this house all summer. And you'll be moving back to the cupboard under the stairs. With everything arranged, the Dursleys began their long wait. Vernon kept glancing at the clock on the wall. Time seemed to be crawling. He wondered if the darn thing was broken. Finally, the hands pointed to 8 o'clock, ding-dong, the doorbell rang, and the Dursleys jumped into action. Following their rehearsed routine. Opening the door, they found a well-dressed, tall gentleman and a beautiful woman in elegant makeup standing outside. So young. That was Vernon's first thought. He'd pictured an old man with white hair. He was momentarily stunned, then plastered on a smile. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Swann. Sebastian smiled and nodded. Mr. Dursley, pleasure to finally meet you. Thanks for having us. This was the first time Sebastian had seen Vernon Dursley in person. He was just as he remembered him from his previous life, still with that beefy frame. Vernon, all smiles, quickly ushered the Swanns inside. As he passed the cupboard under the stairs, Sebastian muttered something thoughtfully. What a classic cupboard. Just like I imagined. What was that? Vernon asked, not catching the whole thing. He just vaguely heard cupboard. He glanced at the cupboard suspiciously, puzzled. Was there something special about it? Never mind. Sebastian walked into the living room, greeted Petunia, and sat on the sofa with Mia. Petunia smiled, but behind the smile, she looked a little confused. Strange. Why did Mrs. Swann look so familiar? As soon as he sat down, before Vernon could get a word in, Sebastian asked. Mr. Dursley, according to the company's file, you have another family member. Why don't you have him come and say hello? Dursley stopped short, swallowing what he was about to say. He hadn't expected the conversation to start like this. It wasn't how they'd rehearsed it. I do have a nephew, Dursley said hesitantly, but he's a bit shy, so maybe it's best he doesn't intrude. Sebastian reached out and held Mia's arm, and emphasized to Dursley. Just call him out. It's common courtesy, isn't it? Dursley had no choice but to call Harry. He was going to give Harry some instructions first, and that scar, it would be best if he could cover it with his hair. Petunia stayed in the living room and chatted with Sebastian. The more she looked at Mrs. Swann, the more familiar she seemed. Just as her suspicions reached a peak, Vernon appeared with Harry. Harry was confused. He'd been fine upstairs, then Uncle Vernon had insisted he come down to greet the guests, laying down all sorts of rules, the angle of his smile, the way to swing his arm, the words of greeting, the tone of his voice, and on and on. Harry's head was spinning with all the complicated instructions, and he'd already forgotten most of them. Just as he was trying to remember Uncle Vernon's instructions and get on with the plan, he saw the man on the sofa wave at him. Hello there. Harry Potter. Chapter 64. Your attitude makes it difficult for me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The second Mia laid eyes on Harry, her eyes welled up instantly. A tidal wave of emotion crashed over her, leaving her breathless. The kid in front of her was scrawny and small, with messy hair and those unmistakable, lily-green eyes. This is Lily's son. Her best friend's kid. The almost godson. Mia shot to her feet, tears streaming down her face, and brushed Vernon aside, pulling little Harry into a hug. Harry, you poor thing. Mia choked out, I'm so sorry I'm late. 10 years late. When Mia first heard that Lily and James were dead and that Harry was the only survivor, she was determined to adopt him, but when they arrived at Privet Drive, Dumbledore stopped them. Maybe Dumbledore didn't trust Sebastian back then, maybe he worried Harry's fame would turn him into a spoiled brat in the wizarding world, maybe Lily's protection spell meant Harry had to live with his relatives. Whatever the reason, Dumbledore denied Mia's adoption request. Even worse. Dumbledore made them promise not to contact Harry or interfere with his life in the Muggle world until his 11th birthday that summer. Mia never spoke to Dumbledore again. She couldn't forgive him. Unlike Mia's pure concern, Sebastian had mixed feelings about Harry at the time. Sure, he loved the characters from the movies and books, but he also saw Harry's fame as a way to build his own in the wizarding world, and, of course, he didn't want to upset Mia. Mia and Lily were incredibly close. She truly thought of Lily's son as her own. Mia never forgot about Harry. Every year, as his birthday approached, she'd hand-pick Muggle toys and write heartfelt birthday messages. Now she'd finally found him. How could she not be emotional? Harry was completely bewildered. He had no idea what was going on. 3 questions raced through his mind. Who am I? Where am I? What's happening? Harry, squeezed within an inch of his life, managed to croak, "Excuse me, but I don't think I know you." Mia released him. Just as she was about to explain, Sebastian spoke up. "Actually, we've known you for years. Remember the birthday presents you got when you were 5? Every gift had a birthday message from us." "Birthday presents?" Harry perked up. Birthday presents were his favorite thing. Okay, so maybe there were only 4, nothing like the mountain of gifts Dudley got, but those messages always made him feel warm, like someone cared. Thinking about the source of the gifts, he hesitated. But, those gifts. Didn't they come from Uncle Vernon's company, the orphan outreach program? It's a different person every year. I've seen them all. Sebastian sighed inwardly. Because of his promise to Dumbledore, he couldn't deliver the gifts himself. He needed a good cover story, so, when Harry was 5, he bought a ton of stock in Grunnings and became a board member at Dursley's company. Then, he started a charity fund at the company to benefit orphans. Any employee who adopted an orphan got an extra £1,000 a month, and, on the kid's birthday, a staff member would deliver gifts and birthday wishes. Remember the signatures at the bottom of the messages? Mr. White, Mr. Wolf, Mr. Prince, Mr. and Mrs. Swann. Harry's eyes widened. It all clicked. No way. Why hadn't he realized that Mr. and Mrs. Swann were the people who sent him gifts? He looked up at Mrs. Swann, tears welling up in her eyes, and felt an instant connection. Harry's throat tightened. Mrs. Swann. Before he could finish, Mia hugged him again. Don't call me Mrs. Swann. Just call me Mia. Mia? Petunia gasped, finally recognizing the woman in front of her. Lily had invited her to visit when they were kids. No wonder she looked familiar. She stood up, disbelief etched on her face. You're Lily's friend, the witch. That's right, Petunia. And I'm here to take Harry. He needs some magical education. Mom's friend? Witch? Magical education? Harry's head spun. Could it be? Was he a wizard, too? No. Petunia shrieked. I won't allow it. Harry is not going to that awful place to be taught by a bunch of freaks. Vernon finally understood. The 2 people in front of him were wizards, like Petunia's sister. Awful. A wizard in his house. He'd spent his whole life avoiding these weirdos. He rushed to Petunia's side, shielding her behind him, his face red. You are not welcome here. Leave now. And don't even think about taking Harry. He's not going anywhere. He's staying right here. Sebastian nodded to Mia, signaling her to take Harry away to pack. Then he steepled his fingers, a half-smile playing on his lips as he looked at Vernon, a truly menacing presence. Mr. Dursley, we are definitely taking Harry today. I said. So arrogant. Vernon's face turned even redder. He was breathing hard, his chest heaving with rage. You know, because of Harry, you get an extra £1,000 a month. Is that money any good? It's standard procedure. Vernon tried to keep his voice down, afraid he'd explode. It's a company program. I applied the right way. Really? Sebastian's lips curved upward. You're very naive, Mr. Dursley. You've been in the working world a long time. Haven't you figured out that sometimes the perk comes before the job? The whole reason the company has this program is because of Harry. You get that extra allowance every month because of Harry. The fact that you get to meet with the board members is because of Harry. With each word, Vernon's face paled. He looked stunned. Harry was that important. This guy had enough pull to create a program just for Harry. Vernon's anger evaporated, replaced by fear. He finally understood. This man wasn't just a wizard, he was a board member at his company. He could lose his job with a single word. He had a family to support. Petunia was unemployed, and Dudley was starting at Smeltings. They needed the money. This evil wizard must have wormed his way onto the board with dark magic. What was he going to do? Vernon was trapped. Was he really going to have to bow down to this freak just to survive? Mr. Dursley. Sebastian leaned back in his chair, looking completely at ease. I don't want any trouble. I was actually looking at your resume, planning to give you a promotion and a raise, move you up a level to department manager. But your attitude is making it pretty tough. Promoted? Manager? Vernon's eyes lit up. This wasn't evil wizard oppression. This was the company recognizing his talent. His face broke into a smile. He cautiously ventured, maybe it wouldn't be the end of the world if you took Harry. It's just that Petunia is a little attached to the boy. He sighed, thinking about Petunia's feelings. When we took Harry in, Petunia and I made a promise to keep him away from that horrible world. Vernon glanced at his wife, pulling her close. Petunia. Petunia is just worried about Harry's safety. Go ahead and take Harry. I'll talk to Petunia. Mr. Dursley, Sebastian smiled. Harry's going to study at a place called Hogwarts. It's the safest place in the wizarding world. Don't worry, Petunia. Harry will be back every summer to see you. And I'm a man of my word. You can start thinking about your plans as manager. Vernon's smile widened. He launched into the script he'd rehearsed, eager to please Sebastian. When Harry came downstairs, suitcase in hand, he found everyone smiling and chatting. Without a second thought, he said goodbye to his aunt and uncle and followed Mia and Sebastian out the door. As soon as they stepped outside, Sebastian spotted a familiar figure lurking behind a tree. In the dim light, he was almost invisible. Sebastian grinned. Wasn't this stubborn old coot swearing he wouldn't come? Ha! He, Mia, and Harry strolled down the street. Once they were past the tree, Sebastian grabbed Mia and Harry and spoke in a low voice. Let's apparate. Harry lay on the unfamiliar bed, replaying the odd squeezing sensation of apparating, a sense of wonder bubbling inside him. So cool. This was magic. He closed his eyes, smiling, and whispered to himself. I love magic. Chapter 65, 1 Gold Galleon, just small money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Harry, wake up. Harry was lost in a magical dream when he heard someone softly calling his name, Master. Are they talking to me? He opened his eyes, blinking in confusion. Everything was blurry. He grabbed his glasses from the nightstand, and the world snapped into focus. He looked down at the foot of his bed, and what he saw made him jump. A tiny creature stood there, with bat-wing ears and eyes like tennis balls. It was dressed in a sharp black suit, standing ramrod straight like a little gentleman. The suit had a subtle sheen and a perfect cut that screamed high-end. Harry didn't know much about suits, but he knew this one cost a fortune. Uncle Vernon definitely couldn't afford something like that. If it were human, Harry would peg him as the kind of butler you only saw in old movies about fancy families. What is this thing? I don't think I know him. He blinked to make sure he wasn't hallucinating. He was instantly curious. He'd never seen anything like it. Hello, Master Harry, the creature said with a polite bow. Breakfast is ready, sir, and madam are waiting. Harry sat up quickly, extending his right hand. Hi, I'm Harry Potter. Who are you? That the little creature's face showed a flash of surprise, quickly replaced with delight. It took Harry's hand and shook it. I'm Jeff, the Swann family's house elf. Call me if you need anything. Master Harry, you're good people, just like Mr. and Mrs. You know, wizards never shake hands with elves. Hurry up now, Madam says she's taking you shopping today. A house elf? That's unreal. Harry got dressed, washed up, and headed for the dining room. The moment he walked in, Mia pulled him into a big hug and kissed him gently on the forehead. How'd you sleep? Did you sleep all right? I wanted to let you sleep in, but we've got a busy day planned. Eat up, then we're off to Diagon Alley, the magical world. Mia ushered Harry into his seat, watching him with affection as he started on his breakfast. Sebastian smiled, pleased by the whole scene. He started thinking about the best way to help Harry. With any other kid, the rest of summer would be a breeze, amusement parks, road trips, whatever he wanted, a full-service childhood do-over, packed with fun. Even if Voldemort came back, they could just pack up and leave. Avoid the fight altogether, but Harry didn't have that option. He was stuck, a pawn in a bigger game. Sebastian thought back to the scrappy kid from the books. He only really shined in defense against the dark arts. The rest of the time, he and Ron were basically copying Hermione's homework. He wasn't exactly a studious kid, and he wasted his potential. Without Dumbledore constantly intervening, Harry never would have won in the end. That gave Sebastian an idea. Today was for fun, but starting tomorrow, Harry was getting to work. He'd put him through an elite Auror training program. Sebastian grinned, grabbing a glass of milk and putting it in front of Harry. Drink your milk. You need calcium when you're growing, so you get tall. After breakfast, Harry could barely contain his excitement. Diagon Alley, here he comes. Today was going to be epic, but how would they get there? Would they teleport again, like yesterday? He wasn't a fan of that feeling. While he was lost in thought, Mia led him over to the fireplace. Normally, I'd take you to Diagon Alley through the leaky cauldron, but you were looking pretty green last night after operating. So, we'll use the fireplace today. It's quick, easy, and doesn't make you feel sick. She handed Harry a small bag of glittering green powder, then stepped into the fireplace as Harry watched, puzzled. This is Flo powder, Harry. Stand in the fireplace and say, Diagon Alley, nice and loud. You'll see. She tossed the powder at her feet, and with a flash of green flames, she vanished. Harry's jaw dropped. He couldn't believe wizards could travel by fire. He grabbed a handful of Flo powder and looked nervously at Sebastian. Don't worry, Harry, Sebastian said, patting him on the shoulder. Just relax, say, Diagon Alley, clearly. You'll be with Mia in the blink of an eye. And hey, Sebastian added with a confident grin, even if you mess up, I can always follow you, so don't sweat it. Reassured, Harry walked into the fireplace, shouting, Diagon Alley. Instantly, he felt like he was being sucked into a vortex. Everything spun around him, and as soon as he closed his eyes, his feet hit solid ground. He opened his eyes to see Mia smiling at him. Behind her was a bustling, crowded street. Harry stared at the scene, speechless. It was like nothing he'd ever seen, a world beyond his wildest dreams. Diagon Alley was packed with wizards and witches, all wearing robes. They carried all sorts of weird stuff, little bottles with smoke coming out, wands that sparkled, and strange pets tucked under their arms. He looked around, taking in every shop. Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions, Gringotts, the Owl Post, quality Quidditch supplies. Welcome to Diagon Alley, Harry. Mia waved him over, and as Harry stepped out of the fireplace, she pressed a cool leather wallet into his hand. Here's your spending money, 1,000 gold galleons. 1,000 gold galleons. Harry didn't know what a galleon was, but the amount made it sound like a lot of money. He waved his hands, panicking. That's too much, Mia. How about you give me 10, no, 5 gold galleons? Mia smiled and ruffled his hair. Take it, take it. It's a gift. Don't refuse. Besides, it's just pocket money. When you inherit your family vault, you won't even notice it. Family vault. Harry's eyes widened, confusion swirling in his head. He'd never heard of any family vault, or any inheritance for that matter. In this magical world, everything felt both exciting and overwhelming. Mia saw his confused expression and patted his shoulder. Don't worry, we'll help you find the key to your vault. She smiled at Sebastian, who had caught up with them, then grabbed Harry's hand and started walking. Come on, let's get you some decent clothes first. Madame Malkin's is the place to go. Sebastian smiled as he watched them walk ahead, one tall, one short. He picked up his pace to join them. Hey, wait up. You're leaving me in the dust. Chapter 66. Is your family rich? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sebastian was chilling at Florin Fusco's ice cream parlor, happily digging into his cone. Man, I've been shopping all morning. So tired. Worse than wrestling with Gryffindor, just need to chill out with some ice cream. After Harry gets his wand, we're hitting up London for a feast, then, back to the shopping grind in London's shopping district this afternoon, which will probably be even more exhausting than this morning. At least in the wizarding world, you can just shove everything into that bottomless bag. This muggle shopping is a killer, hauling all this stuff around. Sebastian was dying to give himself a leg rub, but he had to keep up appearances. Sebastian, fancy seeing you here, of all places, enjoying some ice cream. A drawling voice cut through Sebastian's peace. Ugh, peace and quiet officially over, can't a guy get 5 minutes to himself? He looked up. Standing there was Lucius Malfoy, tall and imposing, his long, silver hair cascading over his shoulders. His face was pale as snow, with sharp, elegant features, radiating an air of cold nobility. His eyes, however, were cold and grey, flashing with a dark light of arrogance and disdain. He wore a perfectly tailored black robe of obviously expensive material, accessorized with pricey silver jewelry. Screaming pureblood pedigree, Sebastian had mixed feelings about Lucius. He hated the guy's poor judgment in backing Voldemort, but he couldn't deny his skill and guts in keeping the Malfoy family afloat at such a young age. He rose quickly through the ranks of the Death Eaters, becoming one of Voldemort's most trusted. When Voldemort bit the dust, he switched sides in a heartbeat, and his smooth talking helped a bunch of pureblood families dodge the Ministry's crackdown. Now, those extremist pureblood families all looked to the Malfoys, and Lucius had become their poster boy. Sebastian considered him the poster child for fair-weather Death Eaters. It was this that had kept the Swann and Malfoy families on good terms for so long. Lucius was the one who took Snape under his wing when he was first recruited into the Death Eaters, so, the Swann and Malfoy families had remained close business partners. Lucius, what a surprise. Shopping or family business? Pull up a chair, ice cream's on me. Draco's been begging to come, Lucius said, sitting down with a fond smile. It's the weekend, so Narcissa and I are treating him to a day in Diagon Alley. Perfect time to get his school supplies. The first-year supply list never changes. Once Draco's in Slytherin, he'll need your and Severus's guidance. For sure, for sure. Sebastian glanced around. Where are Narcissa and Draco? They're at Ollivander's, getting his wand. I saw you here and thought I'd say hello. Getting a wand? What are the odds? Harry's there right now, could they become friends? Now, that would be interesting. Meanwhile, inside Ollivander's, a little blonde-haired boy spotted Harry, who was in the process of choosing a wand. Hello, my name is Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. Malfoy tilted his head and introduced himself with a touch of arrogance. The black-haired kid across from him must also be starting Hogwarts this year, otherwise he wouldn't be here buying a wand. Perfect, a Malfoy always needs followers. Like his dad said, it's not what you know but who you know. Boy, better recognize. Hi, I'm Harry Potter, nice to meet you. Even though Harry thought the kid was a bit weird, he offered his hand. Harry Potter. Malfoy's voice jumped an octave. The Harry Potter. Do you have a scar on your forehead? He noticed the lightning bolt scar on Harry's forehead before he could finish. Holy cow. It was the real Harry Potter. Even better, this was exactly the kind of friend the noble Malfoy needed. This was a true Malfoy friendship. Hey, we're friends now, he gushed, shaking Harry's hand enthusiastically. Looking for a wand? Let me buy it for you. No, I can get it myself. I have my own money. Harry pulled his hand away awkwardly. Something about the kid's sudden change of attitude made him uneasy. Pocket money? That's chump change, you should save it. Let yours truly, Malfoy, take care of it. Today you'll get a lesson in the financial power of the Malfoy family. Pfft. A giggle from the side made Malfoy spin around. Who dared laugh at the Malfoys? Wait a second, he was so focused that he didn't even see her come in. That looked like Mia Swann. Malfoy's brain was struggling. Did Harry Potter come with Mrs. Swann? Harry spoke. Aunt Mia just gave me 1,000 gold galleons for spending money. Harry was curious. After spending the morning shopping, he had a pretty good idea of what 1,000 galleons could buy, but the way Malfoy was talking, it sounded like that wasn't even pocket change. Just how loaded were the Malfoys? Interesting. This was definitely eye-opening and helped him better understand the magical world. 1,000 gold galleons. Pocket money. Malfoy's face went from red to white. He was humiliated, totally embarrassed. He had been trying to brag about his family's wealth, and he just got slapped down hard, and he couldn't even argue about it. Malfoy, you haven't told me how much pocket money you have. Tell me, I'm dying to know. Malfoy was mortified and angry. Was Harry deliberately trying to humiliate him? He shot Harry a dirty look, grabbed his mother's hand, and stormed out. Mom, I'm starving. Let's eat first and get the wand later. Why does he look so mad? Harry gave Mia a confused look as she doubled over with laughter, shrugged, and went back to choosing his wand. That night at 8 p.m., Harry sat on the couch, fiddling with his new wand, deep in thought. He had so many questions. What's on your mind, Harry? Sensing Harry's distress, Mia sat next to him and asked gently. Tell us what's bothering you. Sebastian and I will help you figure it out. I've just been wondering, Harry said, his eyes filled with confusion. How did my parents die? Was it really a car accident? After seeing all the amazing things wizards can do today, I just can't believe they died in a car accident. Car accident? Mia looked at Sebastian, puzzled. Who told you that? Did Penny say that? Yes, Harry's voice grew eager. I want to know the truth. Can you tell me? Mia hesitated, unsure how to break the awful truth to Harry. Harry. Seeing Mia's discomfort, Sebastian jumped in, his voice soft but firm. The truth of what happened is complicated and brutal. Are you ready to face that? The brutal truth. So, there was a hidden story. Harry was on the edge of his seat. He needed to know everything, no matter how terrible it was. He straightened up, his gaze steady and intense, and looked Sebastian straight in the eye. I'm ready, please tell me everything. Your parents were murdered by someone named Voldemort. Sebastian's voice began to narrate the events of Voldemort's rise. In the end, your mother, Lily, put herself between Voldemort and you. She used an ancient magic to protect you, and she was brutally murdered. Because of that protective spell, the curse Voldemort cast at you rebounded and hit him. He was severely injured and vanished. And you, the only survivor, are called the savior of the wizarding world. Harry started to cry, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Sebastian's voice deepened. Harry, no matter what anyone else says, you need to remember that it was your mother who saved everyone. One day, that monster will be back. One day, he'll come after you. And here's the thing. Sebastian's tone turned serious. When that day comes, will you have the courage to stand up and face that monster? When that day comes, will you have the guts to point your wand at him and avenge your parents? When that day comes, Sebastian paused, will you be strong enough to defeat him? Harry's eyes were bloodshot, he roughly wiped away his tears and said with burning hatred. I want to avenge my parents. I'll do whatever it takes to kill him. So, Mr. Swann, I'd like you to teach me magic. Chapter 67, Wingardium Leviosa. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as Mia got Harry back into his room, she zapped a silencing charm toward the door. She whipped around, glaring at Sebastian. Then, she reached out and pinched his waist, twisting hard. I was practically batting my eyelashes off trying to get your attention. How could you just pretend you didn't see me? Telling Harry everything. He's just a little kid. There's nothing he needs to know right now. You want him to get revenge? Face Voldemort? This is like that story you told me, Journey to the West, where some nobody goes after the monk and his disciples, right? It's supposed to be somebody's, Sebastian corrected cautiously. Are you kidding me with the name? Mia's voice went up an octave. Seeing Sebastian's blank look, she gritted her teeth and twisted his waist again. He's still a kid. You think he can beat Voldemort after a few years of practice? You want him to do something Dumbledore couldn't? What are you even thinking? Still fuming, Mia grabbed a pillow from the sofa and whacked Sebastian with it a couple of times. Okay. Sebastian hugged Mia, patting her back to calm her down. My bad. I made you wink at a brick wall. Just listen to me out. Sebastian spoke softly, rocking Mia gently like a baby, trying to reason with her. This will give Harry something to strive for. You know how Hogwarts is. I'm worried he'll lose interest in learning if he doesn't have a goal. Besides, it's always good to get stronger. I don't expect him to take down the Dark Lord or anything. I just want him to be able to stand up to those Death Eaters. At least so he doesn't get captured right away. Even if he can't win, he needs to be able to run. Mia's tense shoulders slowly relaxed, and she rested her head on Sebastian's shoulder, starting to cry softly. I just feel so bad for Harry. He's so young, but he has to deal with all this. You have to teach him everything, don't hold back. You hear me? She looked up at Sebastian, her eyes red and teary, then gently rubbed the spot she'd just twisted. Does it hurt? I'm sorry. I just got a little carried away. Sebastian lovingly wiped the tears from Mia's face and thumped his chest. Don't worry, I got this. It's no big deal. You go back to sleep. I'll figure out what to teach him tomorrow. Hearing the door close, Sebastian immediately winced. Ow. That stings, he hissed and pulled out a potion, applying it to the reddened skin while glaring resentfully toward Harry's room. Nice one, Potter. I barely get here, and I'm already getting injured. Tomorrow, I'm going to work you hard. The next morning, Harry followed Sebastian to his study. Mia's busy with her job at St. Mungo's. She won't be home during the day, so she won't be able to hang out with you. Alright, let's get started. While we're learning, you can call me Professor Swann. Harry immediately raised his hand, looking like a curious kid. Professor Swann, I have a question. He held up his wand, showing it to Sebastian. Do wizards always need wands? I didn't have one at my aunt's house, but I still did some pretty strange stuff. Like the time my aunt made me wear this dress I hated, and it just kept shrinking until nobody could fit in it. Also, Harry touched his hair, grinning sheepishly, I guess because I always wanted to hide my scar with my hair, it grows really fast. I could go to the barber one day, and the next day, it'd be back to the same length. So, I was wondering, why use a wand? Wouldn't it be easier without one? Lots of questions, good for him for wondering why things are the way they are, and it's a pretty insightful question, too, that's right. A kid suddenly discovering magic should have a million questions. Also, Harry was a diligent student when he first got to Hogwarts. He took notes and stuff. But after hanging out with Ron all the time, he kind of slacked off. Great question, Sebastian said with a smile. Powerful wizards can definitely cast spells without a wand. Like this. He snapped his fingers casually, and a bottle of Coke flew across the room, landing perfectly on the table in front of them. It's handy, but with a wand, I can control the magic more precisely and do more complicated stuff. Little wizard's magic is pretty unstable, though. You can't always do what you want. When you get a little older, your magic will get stronger, and if you can't control it, things can get dangerous. Sebastian pointed to the wand in Harry's hand. That's where the wand comes in. It lets us release magic steadily. That way, we can cast spells safely. So, a wand is essential for young wizards, and even for a lot of adults. Without their wands, some wizards can't even cast a simple spell. You need to protect your wand. It's the foundation of our magic. Sebastian popped open the Coke and took a long swig. Harry, casting a spell comes down to three things: the wand movement, the words, and our magic. So, first we need to understand what magic is. What is magic? Harry shook his head. I haven't read the books yet. I don't know the official definition. The books are too complicated. You wouldn't get it even if you did read them. Don't worry, I'll show you. I've got the perfect spell for this, the levitation charm. The magic word is Wingardium Leviosa. Watch my wand, a flick and a wave. As he said this, the feather in front of them floated gently into the air at Sebastian's command. You have to say the words right, or it can be dangerous. Hearing Sebastian's instructions, Harry practiced the pronunciation of the spell a few times, then raised his wand to the feather in front of him. Once, twice, 3 times, the feather stayed put on the table, like it was mocking Harry. Harry tried to copy Sebastian's movements, trying really hard to get it right. He was getting impatient, and he started waving the wand around faster and faster. Hearing the whooshing sound of Harry's wand, Sebastian, who had no idea what was going on, reached out to stop him. Harry, you don't have to copy my moves exactly. It's actually simple, just a flick and a wave. Don't rush. Impatience is the worst thing when you're learning. And remember what I'm about to say. Magic is the power to make what you want happen. It's the power of belief. You have to really believe that the spell is going to work. Don't doubt yourself. Sebastian smiled, and his voice was strong, making you want to believe him. Come on, take a deep breath, clear your mind, wave the wand naturally, and believe that you can do it. Harry closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he felt calm, he opened his eyes and looked at the feather. He moved his arm slightly, using his wrist to move the wand, a flick and a wave. Wingardium Leviosa. Chapter 68. The magic world is full of tricks. I want to go back to the countryside. You are listening at Novelfull.audio. The feather drifted off the table, floating like a dancer in the air. It seemed to be telling Harry something, cheering him on. Harry was ecstatic. He'd finally done it. Excellent. Sebastian praised. Really focus on the feeling. Can you sense something moving from your arm, through your wand? Almost like an invisible connection between the wand and the feather. That's your magic. Harry immediately focused on his wand. He gently rotated it, and the feather mirrored his movements. He could feel an invisible force connecting them, unseen, untouchable. So this is magic. Excited? Want to learn some killer spells? Harry nodded, eager. This wasn't so hard after all. He was ready to go. He was itching to learn and, well, to practice. Too bad, Sebastian said, deflating Harry's enthusiasm. Most powerful spells require a lot of magic. Yours is still too weak. Even with perfect pronunciation and wand movements, you won't be able to cast the really strong stuff. Don't worry, I'll teach you some basic jinxes first, something you can handle at your level. Remember that sensation of magic flowing through you. Now, let's head to the duel field. Duel field. Harry's heart leaped. He'd noticed the empty space in the yard before. He'd always assumed it was some kind of abandoned tennis court. He'd even wondered why there wasn't a net. Once they reached the arena, Sebastian resumed his instruction. Unlike the levitation charm, basic jinxes are offensive spells. Remember the feeling? When you cast the charm, you link the wand and the feather with your magic. Jinxes are different. Once they leave your wand, there's no connection anymore. Like throwing a rock. Once it leaves your hand, you can't control it. Sebastian waved his hand, and a practice dummy appeared in the arena. Red flash, and the spell struck the dummy's chest. Harry, with spells like this, accuracy is key. Does this feel familiar? Harry's eyes lit up. I know. Like soldiers practicing their aim. Exactly, Sebastian confirmed. Except, our spells work if they hit anywhere on the body. But don't forget, our opponents are usually wizards. They can move and dodge. So, accuracy, control of your magic, timing, and footwork are all vital. That's what we'll be working on. Prepare for some hard work. Building on the levitation charm, Harry picked up the basic jinxes quickly, mastering them in no time. Sebastian nodded, impressed. Not bad. He really does have a knack for this. He learned those spells fast, and his aim is great. He's hitting the dummy nearly every time, even while moving. His accuracy is good. Sebastian grinned, a wicked glint in his eye. He moved to the opposite side of the arena. Harry, beating up dummies is pointless. It won't help you improve much. You know, real combat is the only way to truly get better. Come on. Attack me with everything you've got. Show me what you can do. That he just stood there, and it sent a shiver down Harry's spine. Harry's eyes widened and he nervously twitched. No way, I haven't even made it out of beginner's level, and you want me to fight you? How can a level 1 noob take on a boss? This kind of thing, I've never seen before, Aunt Mia. Sebastian is picking on me while you're gone. Harry swallowed hard, gritted his teeth, and raised his wand at Sebastian. He wouldn't back down. He couldn't. If he backed down now, how would he ever face Voldemort and avenge his parents? He had to be brave enough to challenge those stronger than him. Courage surged through Harry. If he couldn't beat him with power, he'd have to use his brain. Professor Swann, please forgive my lack of honor. Sneak attack. Stunning jinx. Pretty good, but too slow. Tooth flossing spell. Don't just stand there. You're telegraphing your attacks. Move. Leglocker curse. Whoa, almost got me. Keep trying. Tarantaligra. Very good, progress. But now I'm going to fight back, so watch yourself. That night, Harry collapsed into bed, his body screaming in protest. So tired. I want to go back to the Dursleys. His arms ached from waving his wand, his legs still trembled from dodging spells, his whole body tingled, a sign, according to Sebastian, of magic exhaustion, which was normal. He also said he'd get used to it. I want to cry. But as Harry replayed the day's training in his mind, a small smile crept onto his face. I learned a lot today. I made real progress. At least, after the first few spells that had actually hurt, he'd managed to dodge the rest. Hey. That's called dodging skills. He closed his eyes, his voice trembling as he encouraged himself. Good luck tomorrow. For the next 2 weeks, Harry trained hard, pushing himself to his limits every day. To make sure Harry didn't overdo it, Sebastian provided excellent support. In addition to carefully prepared meals, he also gave Harry special potions to replenish his strength and energy after training. These potions were like miracles in a bottle. Every time Harry finished training, exhausted and ready to drop, he just had to drink one of those tonics and his strength would return in minutes. It amazed him every time. The potions were truly magical. Seeing how fascinated Harry was with potions, Sebastian wondered if he should ask Snape to give Harry some lessons. He's got nothing to do during the holidays anyway. I'll do it. Meet him at Spinner's End tomorrow. Hehehe. Severus, I'm bringing Harry to you. You two have to get along. Chapter 69. Severus, you want students, not. You are listening at novelfold.audio. In the early morning sun, Spider's Tail Alley greeted 2 visitors, one tall and one short. They ignored the grime and chaos, heading straight for a house at the alley's dead end. Bang, bang, bang. At the knock, Snape threw open the door, his face as sour as ever. Sebastian, what couldn't you say in a letter? You know not everyone has as much free time as you. Before he could finish, Snape noticed the boy standing behind Sebastian. His usually lifeless eyes flickered, pupils shrinking. When he got a clear look at the boy's green eyes, his heart clenched, stealing his breath. Morning, Severus. Didn't even have to ask if you wanted a student, I brought you one anyway. Sebastian grinned, a stark contrast to Snape's frozen expression. What's with the dumbfounded look? No more complaining. Spit it out. I'm all ears. Hello. Sebastian nudged Snape aside, ushering Harry into the living room. Thought you might be lonely during the break, so I found you a project. Sebastian raised an eyebrow at Snape, playfully jabbing him with his elbow. Pretty good of me, huh? Brotherly love. Come on, this is Harry Potter. He's got a real passion for potions, guaranteed to meet your standards. Harry, don't just stand there. This is Professor Snape. Say hello. Harry stepped forward, offering a quick salute. Hello, Professor Snape. Snape's mind was reeling ever since he saw those green eyes. It was too dark that night, the details were blurry, but now, everything was sharp and clear. How could they be so similar? Those eyes, exactly like Lily's. This is Lily's son. Seeing the face so like James Potter's, Snape snapped back to reality, a wave of bitterness washing over him. That face just doesn't match those eyes. Total mismatch. He forced himself to calm down, pushing the distracting thoughts away. He clenched his teeth, desperately trying to quiet the sound. Sebastian, come with me. Now. Harry, make yourself comfortable. Sebastian patted Harry's shoulder. We're just going to discuss the curriculum with Professor Snape. Don't worry, Professor Snape will like you. Harry watched them disappear into a room that looked like a study. He caught a glimpse of a workbench overflowing with potion-making equipment. Once the door clicked shut, he began to examine the living room. It was a small, dimly lit space with simple furniture, a worn sofa and a beat-up coffee table. A large desk dominated the center of the room, piled high with magical texts. An old oil lamp cast a weak, yellow glow, making the room feel even darker. Bookshelves lined the walls, packed with heavy tomes and scrolls, all looking ancient and precious. The potent aroma of herbs and potions filled his nostrils, confirming he was in a potions master's lair. But, unlike the ever-smiling Sebastian, this professor was serious and unapproachable. Harry hesitated, torn between his desire to learn from the potions master and his fear of being judged. He was filled with anxiety and apprehension. In the other room, Snape slammed the door shut and cast a soundproofing spell toward the living room. His mask of composure crumbled, replaced by barely contained fury. You idiot, Sebastian. How could you bring Harry here? Do you even know who I am? Who are you? Sebastian shrugged. Just a professor at Hogwarts. Snape's face twisted with rage. That arrogant jerk always knew how to get under his skin. He ripped open his sleeve, revealing the dark mark. I'm a Death Eater, in case you forgot. Anyone who sees Harry here is in danger. The Dark Lord will return, sooner or later. What do you expect me to do then? So, flip the script, Sebastian said calmly. Wouldn't it be more satisfying to join the good guys and fight the Dark Lord out in the open? I'm undercover. Snape's voice was laced with pain. He only showed his true self to this friend. I can't stand in the light. Snape's voice was bleak. Besides, Dumbledore won't allow it. It was a promise I made to him. Screw Dumbledore. Tell him to shove it. Sebastian was getting angry now, his voice sharp. I'm telling you, I'm waiting for the right moment. When it comes, even Lucius Malfoy will switch sides. We don't need an undercover agent like you. Just be a professor at Hogwarts, Severus. Snape's face settled back into its usual impassive mask, as if he had finally released some pent-up emotion. Going undercover was my choice. I hope you understand, my friend. I want to get my revenge on the Dark Lord in my own way. Harry's still waiting outside. Snape pointed skyward. Maybe Lily's watching, too. Don't give her a reason to worry. Harry's here now, so I'll do my best to teach him. Lily had a real gift for potions, and I won't let it go to waste. He opened the door and headed back to the living room. The scene before him stopped him in his tracks. That damn show-off. He couldn't even give him a heads up that Harry was coming. The place wasn't even clean. The table was a mess. Sebastian followed Snape, grinning at Harry on the sofa. Harry, I've got to run. I need to get back to Hogwarts. I'll pick you up this evening. If you get hungry or thirsty, just ask Professor Snape. Don't be shy. See you later. Sebastian left, leaving Snape and Harry to stare at each other. Snape tried to ignore Harry's face, focusing on his eyes. Mr. Potter, what happens if you add powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? I don't know, Professor, Harry said, shaking his head. What is a bezoar? What does it do? Where can you find it? I don't know, Professor. Harry's voice was barely a whisper. What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? Harry hung his head. This is it. He couldn't answer a single question. He should have studied up before coming. He was sure he was about to get kicked out. Just as he was wondering how he'd get home if he was thrown out, Snape's words lifted him from the depths of despair. Excellent. If you knew everything, what would you need a professor for? I'm giving you a self-inking quill, to record everything we learn. Now. Let the lesson begin. Chapter 70 The Old Man Who Stole Phoenix. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After leaving Snape's place, Sebastian headed to Hogwarts to meet Dumbledore as planned. The castle felt eerily quiet during the holidays, a stark contrast to the bustling school year. The corridors were silent, no longer echoing with student chatter. Only a few ghosts drifted by, leaving a chill in their wake. The marble staircase stood still, no longer vibrating with hurried footsteps. The great hall felt empty, missing the usual flurry of owls delivering mail. Sebastian opened the headmaster's office door and chuckled at what he saw. Dumbledore was sitting there with a bright, colorful quill, using it to tease Fawkes. His phoenix, Fawkes stood perfectly still on his perch, but when he got annoyed, he rolled his eyes, flapped his wings, and chirped in protest, like he was saying, seriously, old man? Get a life. Man, this was classic. It was just like those muggle geezers who walk their birds. Only Dumbledore was doing it on a whole other level, with a phoenix, high roller move, for sure. Seeing Sebastian enter, Dumbledore sat back down, put the quill aside, and smiled warmly. Ah, Sebastian. I hear you have a special little house guest. Please, have a seat. Sebastian smiled, nodded, and settled into the chair across from Dumbledore. Yes, headmaster. Your intel is excellent. Harry's staying with me. I took him around London, showed him Diagon Alley. The kid is super curious about the wizarding world and eager to learn spells. Luckily, that's something I'm pretty good at. And after a year of teaching, I've got a handle on how to explain it. So, I've been showing him a few simple spells, and he's been practicing like crazy. Plus, Harry's got a real knack for potions, so I hooked him up with a good teacher, Severus. He's having a blast. Dumbledore's eyes flickered with concern. That sounds like you're keeping yourself busy. But Harry's still young, don't push him too hard. Dumbledore recognized Sebastian's ambition to train Harry right away. He was worried that Harry already knew about his past. He didn't want Harry growing up obsessed with revenge, but he couldn't come right out and say it, or he risked alienating Sebastian, so, he tried a more subtle approach. He didn't have the easiest childhood. I'd like him to relax and be happy. He'll have plenty of time for serious study once he gets to Hogwarts. Sebastian sighed to himself. That might work for other kids, but Harry? He was Voldemort's biggest threat. It wouldn't be long before Voldemort tried to make a comeback. If they didn't get Harry up to speed, would they just let him stay helpless? Happiness is paramount for young wizards, wouldn't you agree, Sebastian? Here we go with the happy-go-lucky education stuff. Sebastian was conflicted. Dumbledore acted like the British wizarding world wasn't in decline. Back when he graduated, because of the war, almost everyone knew the shield charm. Nowadays, barely any Hogwarts grads could cast it, even a lot of Auror trainees struggled with it. Scrimgeour, the head Auror, was constantly losing his temper about it. It was getting harder and harder to find qualified Auror recruits straight out of school. Even Mia told him that St. Mungo's was having trouble finding therapists. And what about everything else? How long had it been since Hogwarts was a serious contender in international competitions? How long had it been since Hogwarts students were serious competitors in events like the World Potions Championship? If you stayed isolated, you wouldn't know how good everyone else was. Word from Swann's alchemy branch in the US was that Ilvermorny grads looked down on British wizards. They were calling Hogwarts Hogwash School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Sebastian's lips twitched. He didn't agree with Dumbledore at all, but he wasn't going to argue about it. That wasn't why he was here. I'll definitely keep that in mind, Sebastian said with a smile, changing the subject. I wanted to talk to you about a reform plan for next year. Reform plan? Dumbledore perked up. Sebastian had made some bold promises at the start of the last year. Dumbledore had seen the Quidditch team starting to get along by the end. The results spoke for themselves. Even more surprisingly, cross-house friendships were popping up, especially among the third years, and a common factor was that they all took Muggle studies. It seemed the young man had started to break down the barriers at Hogwarts. There was still a long way to go. Dumbledore was curious what ideas he had. My idea is a work-study program, in 2 parts. First, high-achieving students can apply to be teaching assistants for professors. Take charms, for example. Some kids pick up new spells right away, but others struggle. Same goes for transfiguration and potions. The professors can't give enough individual attention to everyone. That's where the teaching assistants come in. They work with the professors and help the students who are struggling. They can earn some spending money, and they solidify their own knowledge by teaching. Muggles have a name for it, the Feynman technique. Sebastian explained the benefits. Second, we need to help the kids who aren't doing so well in class. Some are from Muggle families, some from ordinary wizarding families. We can offer jobs like tending the herbs in the greenhouse, or preparing ingredients for potions class. That way, they can earn their own living. I think they'll be more motivated to study on their own and be good at their school jobs. Sebastian handed Dumbledore a thick folder with the plan. Dumbledore was very interested. He opened it and started reading. He took his time and thought carefully. Finally, he looked up at Sebastian, a little embarrassed. This is a good plan. But there's a problem. The school's funds aren't sufficient.